Good morning, and welcome to your daily Farm and Home Show, brought to you by the University of Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service. And now, here's your host.
Good morning, I'm Joanna Coles, and have you ever looked in your pantry and found maybe some unwanted pests? Well, Dr. Ric Bessin with the University of Kentucky Extension Entomologist is here today, and are going to talk a little bit about these pantry pests that we might have.
Yeah, and really what I wanted to talk about was prevention, because usually people don't worry about it until they show up, and then it's a crisis that's already occurring. And there's actually some very simple things you can do in advance before you have the problem to prevent the problems from ever showing up in the first place.
And a lot of times we don't think about that until we open up that flour or that cornmeal and we see those pests, and then we're very astute about making sure that that doesn't happen again. But what are some of those tips that we can do?
Well, first of all, there's a wide variety of insects that can occur in the kitchen and the pantry. And the reason is we have two things in there that they need. We have food and we have water. That's why we don't see these pests in a lot of other rooms in the house. They need the food and water, which means their populations can grow and develop in there. So, we have things like caterpillars, the Indian meal moth, we have beetles, granary weevils, drugstore beetles, we have fruit flies, we have drain flies, we have cockroaches. I know it's a horrible thing to hear about in the morning here, but that's just the reality of the situation. And so those are the bad guys. I tend to think of what are the hot spots in the kitchen as well. Obviously, the drain, the garbage disposal, pipes underneath, because that's a water source. I tend to think of stored food products, because sometimes we think we're going to buy something and use it the next week or next month, but it may stay on the shelf for 2 or 3 years before we get around to using it. The garbage container, any compost buckets in the kitchen, those are going to be sources as well. And then the last one is we move into the summer, produce that we might pick in the garden and things we get at the store, and we leave that produce out. So those are what I consider the hot spots.
So let's take those one by one. Let's talk about the sink first. You mentioned that, and drain flies. And
Correct. Drain flies grow on that biofilm that occurs in the sink and on the pipes and things like that. So, I would recommend that we regularly clean the trap in the sink. Flush it out. If there's things collecting there, they need to be cleaned out. It never hurts to pour a couple gallons of boiling water down your sink, just to help freeze some of that stuff and kill some of the things that are in there. Check to make sure your pipes are not leaking underneath the sink, because that's going to be a big source of things as well.
Now, and you also mentioned fruit flies. Now, those are different from the drain flies.
Correct. Fruit flies, if you've ever picked some tomatoes and left them on your counter and they've gotten a little old on the counter, you see that little cloud of fruit flies flying above them, or bananas that have been left out. Yeah, those are the true fruit flies. And so, don't store damaged produce for long periods of time. If things begin to accumulate insects, they need to be thrown out. Don't try and salvage some of this. The best is just to get rid of infested materials. Even if you have that old box of pancake mix or something like that, you're starting to notice some insects there, don't try and save it. Toss it out.
Absolutely. Now, some people might call and they say, is there something I can spray? But the life cycle of these pets really doesn't warrant that, or does it?
Well, it doesn't, and I don't think that needs to be our first line of action. That's not a preventive thing either, to spray in the kitchen. I mean, that's where we're eating. We don't want to get a lot of pesticides on counters and cooking materials and things like that. But, if we look at the pantry, one of the things we need to do in the pantry is store things in sealed containers. Containers that have snapping lids on the top, inside Ziploc bags, things like that. If we spill some things in the pantry, we need to pull everything out, clean it down. We can put some paper down on the shelves to keep things a little bit cleaner. But store foods that are going to be there for a long time in sealed containers. I think that's a important thing. And if something does become infested, the other things are not going to get cross-contaminated.
Absolutely. So even if you buy that pancake mix, you open it and use it, seal it back up. If it's not in one of those sealed containers, it's just like a little pest buffet, right?
It is.
And so don't try to save it, get rid of it. But if you have questions, you can always contact your local extension office. We'd be happy to help you identify the pest and then maybe give you some preventative tips on how to make sure it doesn't happen again. Thanks, Rick, for the information, and thanks for watching. Have a great day.
If you have questions about today's topic, please call the Warren County Extension Office at the number on your screen. Thanks for watching and have a great day.